And we're working in language arts today, RLA language arts. And today's lesson is on parallelism. What is parallelism? So anytime you're constructing a sentence, you want to make sure that your verbs are all in the same tense and they use the same form. And this also comes into play if we're using them in a list, or you have and in your sentence, whatever it may be. You want to make sure that they all take on the same form. This will keep your reader from being your readers from getting confused. It will also help the flow of your sentences, and we'll see how that all works. So parallelism, we think about something being parallel, right? It's two straight lines that are close together, right? So they have this sort of equal structure, and that's sort of the idea here, is equal structure throughout your sentences. If it'll open for me. Here we go.
Hey there, this is Curtis, and this lesson is about parallelism. Parallelism means using the same word form in a group or list. This lesson will help you use parallelism in your writing.
It tends to affect verb usage, but it could come from other parts of speech as well.
Parallelism makes your writing better. Parallel structure flows better and is easier to understand. A lot of great writers use parallelism to make their writing more effective. Look at this. To err is human, but to forgive, it's divine. That doesn't really trip off the tongue, does it? But look at the same idea the way that Alexander Pope wrote it, with parallelism. To err is human, to forgive, divine. By using the same structure, to err and to forgive, he gave the phrase rhythm and made it memorable. Now it's a common saying. Let me show you a little bit more about parallelism.
All right, let's take a look here.
One place that it's important to use parallelism is when you have more than one verb in a sentence. All the verbs should be in the same form. Take a look at this sentence. Yesterday, Jane and Charlie baked gingerbread and were making frosting. Look at the two verbs in this sentence, baked and were making. That's two different verb forms, the simple past tense and the past continuous tense. Unless you've got a good reason and you're trying to show a difference in time, the verb tenses in the sentence should match. This sentence would be better with only simple past tense verbs. Yesterday, Jane and Charlie baked gingerbread and made frosting. Here's another example. Elaine will go to the store and will be buying some bread. This sentence has a verb in the simple future tense, will go, and a verb in the future continuous tense, will be buying. It would be better to have both verbs in the future tense, and because both verbs have the word will, you can leave that word off of the second verb. Elaine will go to the store and buy some bread. How about this example? The manager was working late and had finished the reports. This sentence has two verbs again. Was working is the past continuous and had finished is past perfect. You want the verbs to match, right? So what verb tense do you really want? Always ask, is the simple tense just as good? You don't need to use more complex verbs if they don't add anything to your writing. So you might say, the manager worked late and finished the reports. Just remember, unless you have a reason to use different tenses, your verb forms should match. There's more information about verb forms in the resources.
And more times than not, you're going to want to use the same form that you started with. It's usually the error is made in the second half of the sentence or in the list. You're starting off knowing the idea, but you're not finishing with the same parallelism. So hopefully now you kind of get an idea of what the lesson's talking about here. It's when we start changing the tenses within a sentence, and while it may be this a past tense, we're not using the same past tense, and that causes some confusion and looks weird because it's basically saying the manager was working late and had finished the there's two different elements going on there.
Which sentence has correct parallel verbs?
So here, the correct choice is Marcus will give a presentation and answer questions tomorrow. Okay, so future will give, right? It's happening in the future. And as he said, if you use will ahead of the first verb, you don't have to use it after. So will give a presentation and answer questions tomorrow. So if I wanted to correct those other sentences, like yesterday, Loretta planned the conference and was organizing the vendors, you would say yesterday, Loretta planned the conference and organized the vendors. So you have the same verb usage, verb tense. Patrick will organize the project and will be preparing the budget. So Patrick will organize the project and prepare the budget, right? You don't need that extra. And you're also using a gerund phrase here. So you just need to say prepare. Final one. So Sophia emailed the office and had attached the file. So simply Sophia emailed the office and attached the file, keeping everything in the same tense, same form. But in this case, the correct one is Marcus will give a presentation.
Great job. The verb will give is simple future tense. The second verb, answer, is also the simple future tense. It shares the word will with the other verb. The verbs are parallel.
There we go.
Now let's talk about lists of nouns. I'm going to teach you two language terms. A gerund is just an ing verb that's used as a noun, like jogging. An infinitive is a to form of a verb that's used as a noun, like to jog. And of course, there are all kinds of normal nouns, like shoes. Here's the trick. When you have a list, you want all the items to be in the same form. So you either want all gerunds or all infinitives, or all normal nouns. Here's an example. Carol likes jogging and to swim. Jogging is a gerund, and to swim is an infinitive. You either want one or the other. So you could write this sentence a couple of ways. Carol likes jogging and swimming. Carol likes to jog and swim. You don't have to repeat to in front of both infinitives. It's also better not to mix in nouns and infinitives or gerunds. For dinner, I'd like some fish and to roast potatoes. It's better to just use nouns instead of a noun and an infinitive. For dinner, I'd like some fish and roasted potatoes. Another thing you want to be aware of is the number of nouns. That means try not to mix together singular and plural nouns like this. Do you prefer to travel in a car or planes? The same sentence is better if both the nouns are singular or plural. Do you prefer to travel in cars or planes? Of course, sometimes you really do mean that there is only one of something and multiples of something else. I made cookies and a cake for the bake sale. Just like with different verb tenses, only mix singular and plural nouns in a list when you have a good reason.
Yeah, so gerunds, just quickly thinking about that again, as he's mentioned, it's basically turning a verb into a noun. So I jogged yesterday, right? So that would be using just a past tense verb. Jogging becomes an activity, and that's a noun. It becomes a thing when you add ing. Okay, and you change. You're not using that as a verb in a lot of situations. So you have another verb, like a helping verb, to put with that. We will be jogging tomorrow, right? So the verb is actually be there. And then, as you mentioned, infinitives, you want to keep the same form. And yeah, you don't mix verbs and nouns in a list. You want to keep them one or the other. And the same thing with nouns. Typically, if they're plural, you're going to keep them plural, but obviously there are some certain examples there. So let's take a look here at our next
What
example.
change would you make to this sentence?
So I enjoy watching the sunrise and the birds singing. And that one's pretty subtle. You might get away with that, but you want to change the birds singing to hearing the birds sing. So it's change the bird singing to hearing the bird sing. So our first verb, or our first part, I enjoy watching the sunrise. So we need our sentence structure to match that over here, right? We don't have that. I enjoy watching the sunrise. So we need to have and hearing the birds sing. So that way, those two structures are the same, right? That is our parallelism.
Great job! If you change the birds singing to hearing the birds sing, the sentence will read, I enjoy watching the sunrise and hearing the birds sing. Watching and hearing are both gerunds, so they're both in the same form.
Right. Enjoy, that is our verb, right? I is the subject, enjoy is the verb. Watching is the activity, which is a noun. And hearing is an activity, which is a noun. So that's what gerunds do.
There are a lot of different situations where parallelism can improve your writing. Always look for opportunities to use the same form whenever there's a list or series. Let me show you a few examples. Sometimes you'll have a list of simple nouns with a phrase, like this. Before going on a long trip, check your tires, air filter, and whether you have enough oil. The series includes two simple nouns, tires and air filter. Then it includes a longer phrase, whether you have enough oil. It's better if all three are simple nouns. Before going on a long trip, check your tires, air filter, and oil. You could also have an adverb paired with a word or phrase that's not an adverb, like this. She danced gracefully, joyfully, and with confidence. You can make this parallel by using three adverbs. She danced gracefully, joyfully, and confidently. Or you can use with and three nouns. She danced with grace, joy, and confidence. You might run into the same situation with adjectives mismatched with something else. Jamie was strong, brave, and treated people kindly. The solution? Make all parts of the series match as much as possible. Jamie was strong, brave, and kind. Now, you notice that I've used words like to or with only once before the first item in a list. When you have a series of words or phrases that start with prepositions or pronouns like to, with, that, which, of, by, or about, there are two correct ways to deal with it. One is to only put the word in front of the first item, like I've been doing. The other way is to put it in front of all the items, but don't have it in front of some items but not others. Here's an example. He wanted a house that was large, had 2 bathrooms, and that was in his budget. You could use that in front of all 3 phrases. He wanted a house that was large, that had 2 bathrooms, and that was in his budget. Or you can just use that once. He wanted a house that was large, had 2 bathrooms, and was in his budget. So, do you have the hang of parallelism? Just make sure when you have a series or list that the items match.
Yeah, that's the idea. Parallelism is just making sure everything is balanced and matches. Let's take a look here.
What change would you make to this sentence?
All right, so here, just like he was talking about, the man walked silently and with quickness. So that is different form than our first example. So we need those to match. So we change quickness to quickly, right? So the man walked silently and quickly.
Great job. If you change with quickness to quickly, then the sentence will read, the man walked silently and quickly. The adverbs silently and quickly are parallel.
Okay. And I think we're starting our practice questions here.
Hey, good work on those exercises. Now it's time to do some practice.
Okay.
You can show off what you learned. I've got 8.
So let's just take, probably should only take us about 10 minutes or so to get through that. So we want you guys to work on your own for about 10 minutes on those questions, and then we will check. Okay, so first one here says Janice met with the client and had pitched the ad campaign. So as I mentioned, usually whatever you have first, you want to look at the second part of that and see if that needs change. That'll be the part that you want to change. So here we want to turn had pitched to pitch, right? So Janice met with the client and pitched the ad campaign. So simple past tense. That's all we need. That's what we start with. Janice met with the client, right? And pitched the ad campaign. So turn had pitched to just pitched. All right. Correct form here. Dwight wants to drive up the coast and camp. So camp here uses a verb, right? The activity of camping. Dwight wants to drive up the coast and camp. Here, looking at Aaron plans on vacationing at a casino and to gamble. We just need Aaron plans on vacationing at a casino and gambling. That would be the way to correct that. Angelo enjoys walking on the beach and to fish. So Angelo enjoys walking. Remember, enjoys is our verb. Walking here is a noun. And Angelo enjoys walking on the beach and fishing would be the way that you would want to correct that. Oscar likes to paint and playing pool. Again, that's going to be a gerund. So we want Oscar likes to paint and play pool. But our correct one is Dwight wants to drive up the coast and camp. Next up, so remember to pack a toothbrush, toothpaste, and something to floss your teeth with. When it comes down to it, this is kind of clunky. Doesn't sound right. We have a toothbrush, toothpaste, and this long phrase at the end. So we want to match that. And of course, what do we floss our teeth with? Dental floss. So it's going to be simpler. It's easier to read, and it's more balanced to say, remember to pack a toothbrush, toothpaste, and dental floss. So we're changing something to floss your teeth with to dental floss. Okay. And
hey, perfect.
Let's keep going here. Nettie will dig trenches and then be planting the flowers. We change be planting to just plant. We'll dig, right? That's our first verb. We'll dig trenches and then plant the flowers. So we just want to change be planting to plant, and that will balance out the sentence. here's one of those, a little subjective, right? Because we talked about the use of plurals. If you're using plurals, make them all plural. So I enjoy drinking specialty coffees and tea. So we want to change tea to teas to make it plural. That one, well, I suppose too, you're talking about specialty coffees. So it would make sense to continue on with that, to say specialty teas. So teas does make sense there. But again, the exception there, sometimes, like you mentioned, is like I bake cookies and a cake. So, those are sort of examples there where you might want to mix between singular and plural. But this one does make sense now that I see it. Yeah. The man was tall, thin, and clumsy. It's really straightforward. All right, that's our correct answer there. Adjectives to explain this person. If we wanted to correct the first sentence there, the woman was elegant, cheerful, and had an attitude of relaxation. We would say the woman was elegant, cheerful, and relaxed, right? The machine was small, efficient, and didn't cost a lot of money. So again, right, we're using a whole phrase when one word will do, like an adjective. The machine was small, efficient, and inexpensive, right? Parallelism, just a single word. So we're matching everything in that list. The soup was warm and tasted of salt. Well, warm is an adjective, right? The soup was warm. So we just say the soup was warm and salty. That'll work. So here, the man was tall, thin, and clumsy. That is our correct answer. Running, swimming, and to play soccer are all good exercises. Shouldn't that be exercises? That to play is an infinitive, right? But we have gerunds, running, swimming. They're being, they're activity, they're actions, they're verbs, but we've changed them to noun, into things, right? Into activity, so it's a thing. Running, swimming, and playing soccer are all good, and that should be exercises, not extra. Or, well, I guess all good exercise. That doesn't really make sense. Okay, so, but what we want to change here is play, to playing. All right. She finished her rounds happily and with care. Now here, we're going to change care to carefully, right? Or I'm sorry, with care. We don't want to use the with. She finished her rounds happily and carefully. There we go. All right, let's see what Curtis has to say for our finish here.
So, do you get the idea of parallelism? Whenever you have a list of things, whether it's nouns, verbs, adjectives, or adverbs, you want the forms to match. You want to use the same verb tenses. You want to use all singular or all plural nouns. You don't want to mix a list of adverbs, adjectives, or nouns with longer phrases. If you use parallelism, your writing will flow better, and it will be easier to understand. Click results to see how you did on the questions.
All right. So, thinking about parallelism, just a couple of things that when you're writing a sentence and if you're using, like a list or things like that, there's a simple kind of checklist you can do in your head if you're reviewing or editing, am I using all verbs? Am I using all nouns? Am I using the same form? Am I using gerunds or am I using infinitives? Are they the same tense? Are they plural or singular? Right. And some of those will stick out more than others. If you use two nouns and then you have a longer phrase, or you use two verbs and then you have a longer phrase. That doesn't jive, right? You want everything to match. Now, you can use longer phrases for each part of your list. That's okay as well. Whatever it is, though, you just want everything to match in the sentence, right? That's the idea of parallelism. Nice, balanced structure. Do my verb tenses match? Do my nouns match? And sometimes, you know, there are very subtle changes that you could easily miss. That was something, honestly, parallelism. I made it all the way to my senior year at Virginia Tech, getting my bachelor's degree. Before that was something that was actually really pointed out to me. And I was writing a capstone paper to finish my degree, and I took it to, there was a writing help center, and a tutor there pointed out, it's like, yeah, you got to make sure that your sentence, you know, like right here, and then, you know, over here on page 35, and then page 78, there's a couple instances where you're not using parallelism. And it was something that never really came to mind before. So, you know, easy human mistakes, but something we want to work on, and obviously something that can appear on your test. You might have a couple questions about parallel structure in your language arts exam. All right, any questions on that? Parallelism.
I just want to know if exams, are we going to do the RLA, reading, language, and writing, in the same text or differently?
You mean at the same time? Like when you take your test?
No, in the same text.
Yes.
3 of them, yeah. In
yeah,
the same
so
text. Oh.
Right. So you know, language arts as your GED test will encompass reading, grammar, and a writing portion. We get a little closer to that, we'll kind of break it out. With some practice tests, you'll see how that all kind of comes together. You know, essential ed, it kind of approaches a little bit different by separating them into 3 classes. But just like you have a math test and a science test and a social studies test, the language arts test will be writing, reading, and, you know, grammar and language mechanics all together. So that's a good question. Anything else?
Oh, okay.
All righty. Okay, so tomorrow we'll go back to RLA reading and do a lesson. And for social studies, we're just going to dive into some visual visual data, maps, and timelines. I want to show you some different maps. We'll look at how, you know, the different functions and the different information that can be on there. All right. So that's a pretty quick one today, and those grammar classes usually are. So if there's no other questions, how about we call it a day? And tomorrow's the end of the week. So see you tomorrow. All right.
All right. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.